Nations Championship, folks. Fiji hosting Scotland at Murrayfield. Fiji have been disappointing, to put it mildly. Pumped last week by 70 points against England, and the week before they actually played insanely ambitious Fijian rugby, but they couldn't stick their chances, and Wales managed to set-piece them to victory, to defeat for the Fijians. So none from two are they. The Scots, I think, just quietly have looked pretty impressive in both their games, and I think will be bitterly disappointed not to have taken more chances against the Springboks last week down in South Africa, but they are back home for this one. They've made a few changes, have the Scots, I guess, to help alleviate that travel factor for the Fijians. A bit of rotation as well. We'll go through the predictions, the stats. How is this one looking? And you guys can let us know your thoughts. Fiji, as I said, have made a few changes. There's some pressure on this team. Remember, new coach. There's been questions asked by the CEO of Fijian Rugby. The Prime Minister, I think, has had to talk about this competition because of the disappointing nature of the performances. They could certainly use a better result here, even if they are underdogs. Maui, Ikanaveri, and Dongia, there's no change to the front row. I thought the Scottish scrum was good last week, but they have changed it up from last week, so it's kind of hard to draw too many conclusions into how that may be going to go. But the English scrum was certainly doing a job on the Fijians last week. They'll need to bolster their effort because last week was poor. Nasilisile and Mayana Vanua, that is the lock-in duo. They're both Drua players. They've brought it back, Mayana Vanua, into that tight headlock position, so hopefully that'll help out a bit at scrum time. He's a big physical presence. And then Thanakai Vata comes in alongside Sawakula in the back row. Thanakai Vata was one of the few bright spots on that hammering last week. Like, the dude came off the bench and won 4 turnovers. So you'd like him to do something similar this week to at least compete at the breakdown and make the Scottish guys have to, get their clean out right. Otherwise, you can kind of punish them in that department. Lomani back to starting at 9 after Kuruvoli got himself red carded and thus suspended, unavailable for this game. Muntz is still there at 10. Tuisova, the big bus, is there at 12. Vakatawa is going to get his Fijian debut. Former French international who had a cracking season in Super Rugby. The Drua were fairly disappointing in Super Rugby again, but man, Vakatawa had a great season, so he's back, and for his native Fiji, that'll be a special moment for him. Wainingolo has likewise been one of the bright spots, even in last week's defeat to England. 7 defenders beaten in a game which didn't have much going for them, so he is the danger man on the left. Ravu Tamanda is back fit on the right, and then Armstrong Ovula is that second playmaking option at fullback rather than a genuine just kind of out-and-out fullback in Rayasi, who has dropped to the bench. Bench-wise, Matavesi, Natave, and Ravai, unchanged front row. Like I said, they'll want more. Voasese and Salawa also come in on the bench as forward replacements. Sam Wise, your relatively low-cap halfback replacement. Robitsu, I think, is on his debut from the bench. He had a cracking Super Rugby season, so I look forward to seeing him getting himself into some action. And Rayasi, like I mentioned, dropped to the bench after a couple of, not as good weeks as we've seen him play for his club Bordeaux. For the Scots, they have made pretty wholesale changes. Good chance for Gregor Townsend to blood a few guys, get some experience and get some game minutes into guys who maybe haven't had them in the opening 2 rounds. So Sutherland and Hiddleston both start, so congrats to Hiddleston for getting a start after some impressive cameos from the bench. Darcy Ray is likewise going to get a start. He'll be looking to impress at tight head. Johnny Gray's back into the side. I was surprised he didn't play against South Africa because I thought that game would have been tailor-made for him as a big lump who loves to tackle, but he'll be getting some tackling against the Fijians. Max Williamson likewise. So it's a unfamiliar lock-in duo with the combination of Williamson and Gray, to be fair. Bayliss, who had a great cameo from the bench last week, is in at 6. Freddie Douglas in at 7, and Gregor Brown is moving to 8. So it's a very kind of unfamiliar starting Scottish pack, to be fair. We'll see if there's any cohesion issues, but I reckon Gregor seems to have them pretty well humming. Like I said, despite their loss, I thought they were pretty good last week. Horn and Burke is a new 19 combo. I'm chuffed for George Horn because I don't think Gregor Townsend, it's not Brown's choice. Gregor Townsend utilizes him enough, but then again, maybe I'm just too used to seeing him doing his thing for Glasgow, and the international game is not the same. Fergus Burke is there at 10. I think he might have played at 10 in the last game we saw these teams play down in Fiji during the Lions tour. So he'll be looking to avenge last year's loss. McDowell is captain in the midfield alongside Ollie Smith, so Tuipulotu is relegated to the bench for this one as the rotation continues. Duan van der Merwe, Darcy Graham is back to the old familiar wing combo, and then Tom Jordan starts at fullback, so kind of a second playmaking option for the Scots there too. Seb Stephen on the bench will get his debut, so congrats to him. He's another up-and-coming guy. Schoeman and Ferguson will certainly bring the punch from the bench in terms of their scrummaging power if the starting guys can't get it done. Scott Cummings, Magnus Bradbury, and Liam McConnell. So it's another 6-2 split for the Scots. I thought Gregor Townsend, why do I keep wanting to say Gregor Brown, was always like committed to his 5-3, but he's going 6-2 for this one too. Dobie and Tuipulotu are the other back replacements. Hopefully Liam McConnell gets some decent game minutes. I mean, last week, you saw a whole lot of direct carries from the likes of Tuipulotu had, 14? Dempsey had 13. Stain was busting tackles with 7. Tuipulotu had 6. Rowe and Jordan had 5 and 4 respectively. So it'll be interesting to see if the Scots can still use that kind of same expansive game plan against Fiji, like direct carries from the big bodies and then trying to get some width on the ball as well, or do they go slightly more conservative? Because we've seen from Wales in terms of week 1 with the maul how effective that was against Fiji, how effective the scrum was last week from England. Or does Scotland just play Scotland's game? Some stats for the Fijians. It's really hard to read because, I mean, last week they missed 32 tackles and had their line broken 9 times, which is a lot, and they conceded 70-odd points, and they're averaging 12.5 penalties conceded across these first 2 games. So they've been on the wrong side of a few metrics. However, they have won 8 turnovers in both games, so they are absolute threats at the breakdown. And in their first game alone against Wales, they offloaded 32 times, which is bonkers high. They toned it down in the England game, which had a much different vibe about it, but it'll be interesting to see if Fiji still go full Fijian against Scotland. Scotland, their line breaks conceded number is low. It's less than 6, so they are a hard team to break down. Their tackle percentage is pretty high this year, 89%, so it's pretty impressive. And their 28 defenders beaten a game is among the best teams in the world. So they are genuinely a hard team to live with, and they don't kick that much. Less than 20 kicks a game is pretty low for Test match rugby these days. And the games in the Nations Championship thus far have not really been any different. So they have been sticking to their tried and true style. If there's one area which I keep harping on about is they are still vulnerable at kickoff receipt. Their numbers in that area of the game are poor. It is that extra set piece, especially once you've just scored. Catch the ball, get your exit play going. Don't immediately concede points or give the opportunity for opposition to have territory straight away. That is on my wish list for the Scottish team for the remainder of the 2026 season. Recent history between the sides is basically just the home team wins, because the most recent result was in Fiji. Fiji won 29 points to 14. The previous 3 games to that were all at Murrayfield, and they were all Scottish wins. A couple of times the Scottish lads put up 50 points, and then the previous one to that back in 2017, almost a decade ago, which was also in Suva, was a Fijian win as well. So it's in Edinburgh. The Scottish lads are pretty big-time favourites. 23 points with the Rugby Forecast algorithm, 17 with the bookies. So, yeah, Scotland at home, predicted to get it done pretty handily. 2:10 in the afternoon kickoff over in Edinburgh, which is, again, awful timing for anyone watching in Fiji. I don't understand that aspect of the scheduling, but it is what it is. Matthew Carley, Englishman, is the ref, so maybe that helps out the Scottish lads a touch more. For those who play in the Premiership and whatnot, they should be more familiar with Matthew Carley, but fingers crossed he has a good game. You guys let us know your thoughts. Can the Fijians turn it around? Or do you think Scotland, who, as I said, I keep harping on about it, I think are playing pretty good rugby, get it done at home? You guys take care. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'd like to have you along. And yeah, talk to you guys again soon. See you later.